Well, hi everyone, this is Dr. Shoda with this week's video introduction to week number 3 of our course in Principles of Healthcare Research. And once again, a very fine discussion this week. Primarily, the discussion focused in two areas. One was a review of peer-reviewed information and peer-reviewed material and what that means, and a very straightforward question. And I think everybody pretty much got the gist of that really pretty well. Of course, for the most part, we find evidence-based practice, or excuse me, peer-reviewed information relating to evidence-based practice. We find it primarily in the professional nursing databases, things like PubMed and CINAHL and EBSCO. EBSCO is a large compilation of professional databases. So I personally, when I do my searches, I'm usually using EBSCO. CINAHL is included within EBSCO. But that's where we want to be getting most of our information from. And researchers, when they're doing their literature reviews, they're spending all their time in these professional databases, finding articles to find information to validate and substantiate their nursing problems. And I'll talk about that a little bit because that dovetails over and segues into our week number 3 a little bit. But also the discussion question this week focused on, once again, this question of a research question and qualitative versus quantitative. And I went through and I participated in a few of the, or several of the threads, especially when it looked like there might be a little bit of confusion between what's a qualitative and what's a quantitative question. This is important because it's just important to realize that there is, even though we have things that are considered mixed studies, and where we have both qualitative and quantitative studies that are happening essentially concurrently at the same time, with data collection happening at the same time, that doesn't mean that they're mixed in the sense that we have qualitative that is substituting for quantitative and vice versa. In other words, they're not homogenized that way. Qualitative is still always qualitative and quantitative is always quantitative. A quantitative question is one, anytime that you ask if something is going to be less or more, or if, how does one treatment, how does one intervention, how does this new thing, how does it affect something else? Anytime that you have a question where you ask, what are the, for example, what is the effect of a education program on therapeutic communication? What is the effect on nurses? That kind of on its face sounds like that might be a qualitative question because it sounds so subjective. I mean, what are the nurses, attitudes? But that's not what the question is. If you're saying what is the effect, an effect is always a quantitative problem. So just kind of remember that. A qualitative problem is one where the researcher wishes to explore what are the values, attitudes, belief, what is the lived experience, what do subjects say about this particular thing or this particular experience or this particular topic. Any problem can be researched either qualitatively or quantitatively. And in fact, in nursing research, anytime we have evidence-based practice, we really need to be looking at both the qualitative and quantitative data, what it says. But you can't prove anything with qualitative data. You can't substantiate anything. You can't show that something is effective using qualitative data. Qualitative data is useful because it helps us to understand more about what it is that we're looking at. But we can't use it to really prove anything. We can't use it to support any hypothesis or any suppositions. Likewise, quantitative data. Quantitative can't really give us a lot of insight, although we make inferences as to what the data might mean from a qualitative sense. It really, all that it does is it says, it gives us the data. What is more, what works best. It doesn't really prove anything. We'll talk throughout class this concept that research or one research study really proves anything is kind of a novice notion. That's not really correct. No one study proves anything. However, a number of studies done over a period of time that support a particular stance or support a particular thing, whatever it is that we're studying. If the same results can be replicated and over time, repeatedly show that something is true, then we can say that we have some proof. But no one study is meant to be proof of anything. Each study is just a piece of the never-ending chain of nursing research and nursing knowledge. But anyway, we'll talk about that more as we move through. In week number 3, we move on. We're going to be revisiting the same articles that we saw in week number 1, the Beck article and the Kolkaba article. And we're going to look at it this time to say, what problem is being addressed here? Did the authors do a good job of describing the nursing problem? In a sense, do they justify or do they show that there's a significance to nursing practice to study these things that they're studying? And so I will leave it to your books and leave it to your text to read about that a little bit and to think about that rather than bias you with too much information about, what is or what constitutes or doesn't constitute that. But I'm looking forward to another really good discussion going along with that. And again, we'll talk a little bit about the differences, again, between qualitative and quantitative studies. That's kind of sort of inherent in this whole discussion as well. So as always, I look forward to participating along in class with you again this week. As you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. Also, have it on your radar screen. You should be looking at and reviewing your information for the midterm statistics that we're going to be, you'll be tested next week. And again, that statistics test, we don't really discuss it directly in class, although sometimes we're going to be bringing up some of the concepts in the discussion questions. But just remember, you should be reviewing and looking at those statistics. Review the study guide. I will be opening the test next week and be posting that along with my announcement next week. So if you're watching this on Mother's Day, happy Mother's Day. I hope that all of you have a great time with your children and or a great time with your mother or those women in your life who are mothers. Have a great week, and I'll look forward to seeing you in discussion forums.